Right now, that ticking you hear in the distance getting closer, it's the sequester, and it's another man-made disaster. This one, well, this one could actually happen and not just be the sky is falling. We're going to be joined by a sitting congressman who'll tell us what, if anything, is being done behind closed doors to avoid this potential mess. And next, when the Pope decided to step down from his post as leader of the Catholic Church, he left some very big shoes to fill. Could we possibly see even an American in the Vatican? We're going to break all that down and much more, and also let you know where the process moved even today. And later, we will have our Oscars preview. Who wins big and who will go home empty-handed? We'll get into all that. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and thanks for joining us on this Friday evening, February 22nd. I was just saying, it felt like a long week, right? Well, anyway, we begin what we have for the past several days here on RFL with the sequester. Now, at the bottom of your screen this segment, what we decided to do was to run a list. It's got about 57 potential consequences of the automatic spending cuts. And trust me, we could go a lot longer than that, but these are cuts that I think you can put your arms around and understand and feel, and in many cases, maybe even in your district. Now, in a moment, we're going to be speaking with Connecticut Congressman Jim Himes on the impact as well as also the politics. But first, here's an update, and it's from our senior political correspondent and our senior sequestrian, Andrew Whitman.
Well, Rich, as we all know by now, or should be after watching RFL this week, the sequester hits on March 1st. Today is February 22nd, so Congress has the first 4 days of next week when it is in session, and lawmakers can stop the sequester before it hits. The big sequester news today, the president and Democrats continuing to focus on the impacts sequestration might bring, all focused on individual states and districts, showing how the cuts will impact you at home. Also today, the Secretary of Transportation announced rollbacks that DOT will implement on March 1st. The takeaway, bad news for travelers.
Sequester will be it will have a very serious impact on the transportation services that are critical to the traveling public and to the nation's economy.
Specifically, if sequestration hits, expect flight delays up to 90 minutes at major cities. Yes, every area airport here would be affected. Longer maintenance time, that means even longer delays. Canceled flights and the closing of air control towers at the nation's smaller airports. As for the politics, this is the portion of the report where I was going to tell you about developments that might hint at avoiding sequestration. Unfortunately, Rich, today there really weren't any.
That's right here, Andrew. And for more, let's bring in the rest of our panel on this. Dominic Carter, of course, political journalist and author. And we're joined by Congressman Jim Himes, Democrat of Connecticut. And hopefully I'm not setting you up with something bad, but one of the few guys in Congress who always shoots straight with us when we sit down and talk about this. You optimistic that come March 1 we have a deal or not?
I'm not optimistic around March 1st. I am optimistic that a deal gets done. But look, this is the latest installment in a long series of, it's every 30, 45, or 60 days where you take the Congress takes it right to the moment of crisis, and then it gets a deal done. I will tell you that there is not a lot of activity in the House of Representatives and the Senate, as far as I know, the White House, in averting this by March 1st. So what's going to happen? We're going to start to feel the pain. It's going to be the long lines at airports. It's going to be the fact that the military is going to tell us about how they're stepping down their training tempo. It's going to be the defense contractors slowing down their hiring. And when that pain builds to a point of, guys like me hearing about it intensely, a deal will get done.
We'll put a face on it because we put at the bottom of the screen that ticker, but beyond that, for example, people in the Hudson Valley, West Point is going to face huge cuts on its operating budget. Real cuts, real consequences. I mean, some of the best and brightest that'll come out of these academies to give you an idea. But take your district and the neighboring area. Give me an idea of the kind of calls you're expecting to be hearing at your district here that are going to take place March 1 and in the weeks that follow if Congress doesn't get their act together.
Look, it's going to be all over the place. So I've got a lot of folks that use the airports, that travel on business, traveling on business is going to be a very different thing in the first week of March than it is right now in terms of delays, in terms of fewer TSA agents, highway projects that are currently employing people to rebuild bridges. These things are going to get delayed. My office, I'm going to have to think about furloughing some people. So if you need a passport overnight, or if your grandma didn't get her Social Security check, I'm going to be able to be less responsive to you. So this is something we're going to feel.
And I imagine people are going to call. The cost of milk's going to go up, right? I mean, you've got the idea that border security agents, at the same time, we're talking about policing our borders. It's everything in between. Now, what we've gotten such, and I've had people on the right and on the left here that have sat at the table, and they've pointed differing fingers. But they said at the end of the day, Republicans in the House may have authored a lot of this, but the president signed it. Is it fair to say that this is a problem that both parties share equally in, because they knew when they signed this that the bill was going to come due, and if they didn't reach an arrangement, and you know who you're dealing with on the other side, it was foreseeable that even with poison pills, like a 7% cut to the military, these guys weren't going to blink, and come March 1, you were going to have a mess on your hands. Can people really say, I can't believe we're in this position?
Look, I'm confident that a deal gets done here. People are going to blink on both sides. It's just not, I think, going to happen in the next 8 days before March 1st.
And you really only have 4 days, right? Because that's the amount of time you guys are all in. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we are going to blink. The problem is it's going to be graceless. And so our 9% approval ratings are headed to 3 and 4%. It's just absurd. And look, did the president sign? Of course, the president signed the law that created the sequester right after John Boehner said that he got 98% of what he wanted, and he was really very happy. So, what that is all about is the blame game, which actually doesn't move the ball forward at all. And you know what's so frustrating about this? We know more or less what the final deal is going to look like. It's going to have some combination of additional revenues and some pretty painful cuts. And yes, it's
when we say revenues, that's going to mean loopholes that'll be closed, maybe some means testing on the higher end for stuff like Medicare, et cetera.
Yeah.
Do I have it right?
You have it exactly right. I think that given the January deal, which of course found $600 billion over 10 years in revenue, I think rates on income tax, on capital gains, on estate taxes, I don't think they're changing. But as you point out, loopholes are and should be on the table.
We were talking this afternoon in a meeting that the president, the White House put out something saying, hey, listen, we've already cut $2.5 trillion. And the amount of people who say, pshaw, there's no way, that's not real, that's phony money. Respond to that for a second, that the White House says, we're going to get to the $4.3 trillion that we talked about. We're more than halfway there. We've already reduced it by $2.5 trillion. Is that fuzzy math? You're a guy who worked on Wall Street, or is that real savings?
It's a combination of the two. Look, you pretty quickly get into a really boring discussion of baselines. The bottom line is that we are. So we don't have time to go there. Yeah. What I will tell you is that we have borne some pain. 4 years ago, the government planned to spend a lot more money in the next 10 years than we are going to spend as a result of rules. We're not going to be spending money in Afghanistan that we thought we were going to be spending. And by the way, some taxes are going to go up, most notably on those people with very high incomes. That was not true 4 years ago.
Yes.
And we have more to do, is the bottom line. We have more to do, which is why we're facing the sequester situation.
There's a debate in Democratic circles. Progressives say now's not the time to cut anything. The economy's still unstable. You can't cut. Steny Hoyer, for example, said, no, I believe that you should spend what you take in right now. In fact, do we have that soundbite, guys, if you have it? This one of the leaders in not only of Democrats, but in your chamber. Let's take a listen.
You got to pay for what you buy. When you the tease that came on, I said there wasn't a spending problem. There is a spending problem. What I meant by that was that you don't have a problem if you pay for what you buy.
The implication is pay-go. Is that realistic now?
We have, especially if you look beyond today or this year, we have a spending problem. We have made commitments, chiefly through Medicare and Social Security, that in 20 and 30 years we cannot possibly meet. Or we can, by the way, but we won't do anything else. We won't spend money on education, on bridges, on our military. So, we do need to restructure a lot of, and we need to do it in a fair and equitable way, but we have to restructure those elements of our spending that are, by the way, 3/4 of what we spend. And I'm talking about Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid, and defense. That's the bulk, the vast bulk of what we spend. And yes, it's not sustainable. However, and here's the rub, do you do dramatic cuts now? Of course you don't. With a recession that is, well, we're out of recession, but with a recovery that is halting at best, do you do what the UK did and basically flip yourself back into recession by overdoing the austerity? Most economists would tell you that's a bad idea.
All right, I know I'm killing you, Elisa, our producer, because I'm way over the second. I just got one last question. I know there's philosophical differences, but you actually mentioned what I think is part of the problem. Because the approval rating is so low, and it's even lower for House Republicans than House Democrats.
We got that going.
That there's no, yeah, exactly. There's no downside for them to say, if they're in a safe district right now, to say the House will burn it down. And I want to go back to my constituents and say, I'm talking about in their voice, I didn't capitulate on a single thing right now. Is that really the heart of the problem right now, where you got 70 to 100 members who say, I'm not bending on anything, I got nothing to gain?
It's not the heart of the problem. Look, on both sides, more so on the Republican side where you have the Tea Party, you got some people who are in that category. What you have, though, is a vast center that is going to be willing to take some tough votes when they know it matters and it counts, and when the leadership says, we need you to do this. Now, on the Republican side, a lot of those guys, when Boehner says that, are going to say, you know, no,
as we've seen,
as they have. But that's how you get the deal done. And there's a lot more people than you'd expect ready to do that deal when it becomes real.
Okay. We want you guys to keep this conversation going online. Just go to Facebook and Twitter here and sound off. There's the question for you. Do you think we have a deal? And it seems, at least the congressman and I don't think so. Maybe Dominic and Andrew are a little bit more optimistic here. We take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to turn to the issue of guns in America. And as we reported last night, Andrew was in Connecticut, where Vice President Joe Biden visited, and the state still smarting from the wounds left by Newtown. Our guest, Congressman Jim Himes, he'll tell us firsthand how close we are to having real gun reform in America. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back.